Okay, so let's start sort of chronologically, I guess.
Mhm.
So we go back in time, and you've mentioned that you have two main components in your personality in terms of being abstract oriented, but at the same time having this sort of warrior mindset as well. The terrorist attacks happen. So can you walk me through your mindset at that time? Like, what are you thinking in terms of what decision you want to take and how you want to proceed with your life?
I wasn't really expecting much. I was in the reserves at the time, and that's how it started out.
Mm-hmm.
The Army Reserves, which, it's supposed to be like 1 weekend a month, and 2 weeks in the summer. But
Mm-hmm.
when I went to sign up, I met this guy and he was like, "Have you ever considered Army Special Operations?" I was like, "Well, what's that?" Because I didn't grow up really knowing much about like Green Berets or Rangers or anything else. And they were like, "Well, there's these reserve components and civil affairs and psychological operations, and we have a couple Green Beret units." And they were like, if you do really well on your score, you can go into that. And I was like, that sounds kind of cool. But my parents like wanted me to be like a mail clerk, like something just so lame. Because they're like, what if you go to war? And I was like, Mom, Dad, we're not going. Like, it's been peacetime. Like, this is ridiculous, you know? Man, did I eat those words?
Yeah,
You
sounds so.
know? Um, and so initially it was the way my parents had both gone to college. My dad went to the University of Texas, El Paso, and my mom went to this college, a small private college in Michigan. And so they were like, they required, because in the late 90s, it's like that's what you did if you wanted to like make money. It
Yeah.
was you had to get a college degree. That is not the case anymore. I tell my kids
Yeah.
now, you don't got to go to college, like learn a trade, like become a
Yeah,
plumber or an HVAC technician, you'll kill it.
absolutely.
So um and so I joined the military and I was like, yeah, this special operations thing sounds cool. And out of that, so I go to basic training at the School of Infantry in Fort Benning. I think it's Fort Moore. I think they just changed it back to Fort Benning. I don't know. We've been changing our base names a lot here
Yeah,
recently, and
yeah.
there's a lot of goofy stuff happening in the United States right now. So
It
everybody's
seems
very
so.
well aware of that. So we apologize that we're just like it's just
You're
chaos
sorting it
right now.
out. You're sorting it
Yeah,
out.
we're sorting it out. Like
Yeah.
even we don't know what's going on here. I just wake up some days and I was like, well, okay. So
It's interesting, at least.
yeah,
It's dynamic.
it's interesting.
Yeah.
Um, so join the army. And I go to, to that School of Infantry. I pass. I do this program called Split Op, to where you can take some time if you're going through college, and do your training later. Well, that didn't happen. So on September 11th, 2001, I was in my I was living in a fraternity house at the time in
Mm.
college, and my mom called and she was like, "Hey, turn on the TV right now." And it's early, I'm a college kid. I'm doing my party thing, and I'm like, "Mom, no, like what? No." And she's like, "You got to turn it on right now." And so I turn on the TV and I see one of the trade towers like smoking, and I'm like, "Looks like a plane just like crashed into one of the World Trade Centers. Like no big deal." And I'm about to go back to bed, and I just watch as the other plane hits the tower.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And I like let the phone just drop from my hand. And like when you like everyone remembers where they were that day, but for
Yeah.
those of us that particularly saw it happen, it was just like this jarring moment. At
Mm.
first, it was like, yeah, there's probably some pilot error, maybe the FAA, like,
Mm.
it's no big deal. And then when you saw the second one
Yeah.
hit,
Yeah.
that's when it clicked. That's when everybody knew we were under
Mm.
attack. And so I ran down the hallway. I said, "Everybody, wake up! Turn on the TV. We're under attack." And they canceled like all of our school that day. I'm like getting calls from my reserve unit. They're like, "Hey, be on standby." It's a crazy time period. There's a lot of just like nobody knows what to expect. Everybody's filling up with gas because we're going to run out of gas. Because they're like, it's the Middle
Yeah.
East, and
Yeah.
and so out of that, by September 25th, man, I was on a plane to Fort Bragg, North Carolina,
Wow.
to go through the John F. Kennedy Special Warfare Center in school. I graduate that, and then I get a slot for language school. So I was like, hey, I want to learn Arabic. And they're like, no, because we have not realigned anything, and your command is under Southcom, which is Southern Command. So I had a choice of Spanish, French, or Portuguese. And I was like, well, I'm going to choose Spanish because that's going to help me out most in the long run,
Yeah.
which it has. Uh, and so I go and I get fluent in Spanish, and then I get home, and 3 months later, they're like, all right, pack your crap, you're going to Afghanistan. I'm like,
Wow.
okay. So that's literally how it just went. It was like
Wow.
once the towers fell, it was like John F. Kennedy Special Warfare Center in school. They're like, now you got to do your language training. So I did that, and then I got home, and then 3 months later, they're like, pack your crap, you're going to Afghanistan. So
Wow. That's insane.
yeah, yeah.
What, do you remember what was going through your mind just before going to Afghanistan, or, getting the call that you need to go there? Like, what are your,
Oh, I was
what,
so afraid.
yeah,
I was so afraid. But I think like I grew up in the mindset where it's not okay to really show any weakness or fear or anything. So
yeah,
I just kind of buried it. And I took on like kind of this more fun party
yeah.
boy kind of attitude, but internally I was like terrified. And
Jesus.
I started doing things to like kind of subversively, I would say, degrade morale to a degree
Okay.
with my teammates.
Hmm.
Just because my hope is that if I was a bad enough soldier, they would place me in a headquarters unit,
Wow.
and then I wouldn't have to go fight or
Hmm.
something. I'd get my parents would get their wish. They would
Yeah.
get me safe and sound. But I got assigned to a team that was we run in these what's called civil affairs team Alpha or civil affairs team Bravo.
Yeah.
And the Bravo is kind of more like stay behind. Same thing for the Green Berets, who are operational detachment Alpha or operational detachment
Mm.
Bravo. So I got assigned to one of those teams, and we work in 4-man teams. And my team sergeant was just a really cool hard charger. Really just kind of raised me up and instilled in me like courage and confidence. And he saw what was going on and knew that I wanted to stay behind. And finally, when we landed in Kandahar, there was this map, like, and out on the border were like all these stars. It's just like this
Hmm.
huge conglomeration of stars. And I remember we were in this briefing, and he goes, "What's that?" And he was like, and the Green Beret that we were with, he was like, "Oh, that place." He's like, "That place is a shithole." He was like, "Everybody gets shot there." And
Wow.
so at that point on, like my team sergeant Paul was like, "That's where we're going. That's where I want to go." And I was like,
Whoa.
"I don't want to go there." I was like, "I want to have nothing to do with that." But he really took kind of this dad moment with me and sat me down and just worked through my fears with me. And I'll still never forget this. I sat down and he was like, "Hey, I heard you want to stay behind." And he's like, "We've trained together this entire time. I believe in you, you know." And
Hmm.
he finally just said, "Look, man, I'm scared too."
Hmm.
And him admitting that really kind of gave me the courage to kind of forge forward.
Hmm.
And he just told me, "Hey, tomorrow we're going to get on that chopper. We're going out there, and we'll all be afraid together, but we're all going to come home together."
Wow.
And then he just put his hand on my shoulder, and he was like, "Look, courage is doing the right thing even when you're afraid."
Mm.
And so I've never forgotten that. And I went out there and found out that I actually really liked being in like dangerous environments.
Wow.
And it's wild. A friend of mine is a Delta Force operator who's coming out with
Mm.
a really incredible book called Forged in Chaos.
Mhm.
And he almost lost his arm in Sadr City while he was out in Iraq, and then went on to become an actor on CBS's SEAL Team. But in his new book, he posits that a lot of us have like a chaos addiction. It's not post-traumatic stress disorder, because when we're over there, we're doing our job and everything. We come home
Mhm.
to a very comfortable environment, and we can't seem to function really well. And I think that's what it was for me. Like there
Mhm.
was just I was used to growing up in a chaotic environment, not with my parents or anything, but
Mm-hmm.
just getting picked on. I was a smaller kid, you
Mm-hmm.
know, I was the artsy fartsy guy.
Yeah.
So like back in the day, you know, everybody was like, oh, look at that stupid art fag. And like you know,
Yeah.
they just name call you.
Yeah.
And so I never knew what to expect. Would I go to school and get punched in the face or beat up or like what was going on or
Mm-hmm.
my friend's going to like me or dislike me? Well, this girl. And so it was just, I was constantly surrounded by chaos.
Mm-hmm.
And so it made sense that when I went onto the border and I experienced all that chaos, I really thrived in it. And that was just the way there was. And then I would get home and I would miss those environments of chaos. And so, yeah,
Wow.
which eventually led to another deployment where I was like, I literally volunteered. I was like, my friends approached me. They said, hey, we're going to this really stupid, dangerous city. The casualty rate's insane. Are you in? And I was like, let's go. And and I was there for 15 months.
Wow.
And I mean, you can now watch what I experienced in the movie Warfare. It's the most accurate portrayal of really what I've seen with regard to the global war on terror and what happened during, you know, the Iraq and Afghan wars, and specifically in Ramadi. And I think what I love about that movie is that it was just one day, because some days were like that, and then you would come back to the base, somebody will have died, something crazy will have happened. You know, I remember the day my lieutenant got, you know, his front end of his Humvee blown off, and like, you know, we're taking fire and stuff like that. And then you're just back out there the next day. Just
Wow.
weird, crazy stuff like that happens. And then you come home and you're so used to that chaotic environment that when things are calm, you don't know how to function as well.
Yeah. Wow. And that's very interesting because I think society in general sort of take the thinking process and the experience that the army goes through for granted. I don't think many people actually understand what it's like, and I don't understand it either. But as I've mentioned while we were emailing, I recently read Jocko Willink's book, which is
Mm-hmm.
very much concentrated on Ramadi as well. And it was so fascinating to see how many different emotions you are going through and what sort of things you need to overcome in terms of a mindset to just, function
Mm-hmm.
efficiently.